Strategic Affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and you're watching our daily Tuesday to Thursday flagship show, The Gist. A welcome from Taipei to Dr. Puma Shen. He's the chairman of Doublethink Lab and is assistant professor at the National Taipei University. Dr. Shen, thank you so much for your time. I do know it's slightly late there, and you've been giving a lot of interviews about your latest report, Deafening Whispers. But thank you for appearing on StratNews.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Dr. Shen, just wanted to get your latest report. As we said, it's Deafening Whispers. It's looking at online how China is trying to influence narratives. And why it's important, I think, is even though it's looking at the case study of Taiwan and the presidential elections and the narratives that are trying to be spun from Beijing about COVID, it is important for the whole world because it's outlining how Beijing is doing that. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, people always say that Taiwan is a testing ground for Chinese information operation because we're kind of at the front line. So in this report, we kind of try to use the model to explain the basis of Chinese information operation, since it's a very new topic right now. And I think there are like several points that should be addressed here. So first, there must be attackers, right, the adversaries. And second, there must be misleading content. Thirdly, there are like channels that spread disinformation. And the fourth, lastly, people truly believe the disinformation, which means that people are really affected by the disinformation. So in this report, we try to answer all these four questions. In what departments of China are making all this disinformation, and how they spread this disinformation into Taiwan, what kind of content they are creating, and finally, who are the people that are more vulnerable than the other, who will believe and consume this kind of conspiracy theories or disinformation coming from China. And that's the gist of our report.
Dr. Shen, to illustrate it better for our viewers, maybe if you take an example of how you looked at, say, the campaign that was run against H&M and Nike because of, Xinjiang cotton and boycott that was in place. That, would you say, was a successful campaign from Beijing's point of view in terms of those two companies?
Oh yeah, because in our report, it's kind of crucial that because there's like propaganda department from China, and there's also like patriots like Little Pink who working outside of the government, but they kind of collaborate together in this H&M cotton case. So for example, there are several WeChat public accounts, like the big accounts over there, top accounts over there. They will try to pick up some topics that they really want to attack. And then the propaganda department, through the media, let's say People Daily, will select the topic they like and then try to attack the certain company, and making sure that all the public will believe in this kind of strategy and making people believe that the whole China are against the company. And the aim of this kind of information operation is really to create chaos in that country or in certain company. So it's not about supporting a company or a political party. It's like kind of supporting or denouncing both. So they will create the echo chamber and further create a hatred against each other. Russia is good at doing this, and China is too.
Right. Earlier you mentioned, it's important. Your report does that. Identify the actors, the victims, and the channels that are used. You use what is called an extended diamond. If you can explain that to us, and we'll have some of your graphics from your report up.
Oh yeah, the extended model just represents the 4 points that I just mentioned. So on the top of that is the adversary, is the attackers. And on the left is the channels that they use to spread disinformation. And on the right is the content they create. So for example, saying that, oh, the democracy in the Western world is just a failure, or Taiwan is a failed region, something like that. And at the bottom of the model is the victims, like people who believe in the conspiracy theories or believe the disinformation coming from China. So all these 4 points connect together. And we would like to know, how can we categorize all this? So for example, how many attackers are there in China and what kind of content they are creating? And we also listed 4 different channels that they use to spread disinformation in the foreign country and also locally here in Taiwan. And we also list 4 kinds of like personalities. We call it 4 persona. So people, what kind of people, in what age, in what occupation, that they truly believe this kind of disinformation coming from China. And actually we collect 130 conspiracy theories coming from China in 2019, and having people read all these conspiracy theories and we'll see their reaction, and we keep track of their political belief and see whether they have truly been influenced by China. And as you can see in this graph right now is the categorization of the adversary. And there are like 4 different kinds of adversaries here in China, and depends on their motivation or their capital. Maybe I can introduce that later.
Sure. I mean, let me just take some views that are coming in from our viewers. Shai Desi, who's very often comes on our shows, says, great initiative. She appreciates your initiative, Dr. Shen. Anil Maske asks, Dr. Shen, can we say that psychological warfare also includes the disinformation as one tool?
Oh yeah, I mean, psychological warfare is just another term for talking about this information campaign. So I would say that, I mean, the umbrella idea is the influence operation. And then information operation is just part of influence operation. And within information operations, there could be psychological warfare and disinformation or fake news. So fake news is just one tiny part of information operation. If you really want to have some influence in certain countries, it's not necessary for you to spread fake news, right? You can share true news, but just with very intense way, and people might be affected by the way you report or the way you present this kind of information. So I mean, they kind of overlap, but we prefer to use the term influence operation and information operation.
There's another comment from our viewer Kshitij, Dr. Shen, who says this is typical communist disinformation. Pravda, that's Truth, the newspaper that the Soviet Union had, is still doing it for the erstwhile Soviets. Disinformation is the only weapon for the bamboo curtain. What I find interesting is another comment, Dr. Shen, which says, here, let me put it up on the screen by Roshan Sharda. What if China gets quantum computing? What will be the impact of what you are describing now? Will that also jump quantum-wise in terms of its impact?
Oh yeah, because people are always talking about the technology that China possesses. I think it's kind of important, truly, but let's compare the information operation tactics from China to Russia. So Russia is really good at having all these bots and trolls. They have their own bots network who help them to amplify the disinformation. However, bots network is not really popular there in China. Even China is really good at AI. So, I mean, for example, because they got so many people out there, they can having real people having comments on Facebook or on YouTube to leaving all these comments and try to flood all this comment area to having the information explosion. They do not really need AI to do all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of ironic because they're good at AI, but they're not really using it. So if you look at the latest report from Facebook, they're talking about the biggest bots network that has been identified by Facebook. if you look at the top 5 countries, China is not really in it. Because the users that using leaving all this comment or spreading disinformation, they are real and true users. And they're actually hired by the government to do that, or really believe in the government to do this kind of information spread. So I think even they got certain technology, they're really good at something, it doesn't mean that they apply that tactics to their information operation.
Right. We talked about the campaign against H&M and Nike, but Shahid is here also. Asking for a few more examples. Can you list a few disinformation agenda campaigns carried out by the CCP, detected by our organization? And the report, of course, deals with both the presidential elections for when and as well as COVID disinformation that was being given out, right, Dr. Shen?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there are like several examples. For example, there's a company there in Beijing called Wei Technology. So that that company tries to collect our privacy, like private information through Facebook by some psychological test, and then they try to analyze how Taiwanese people will respond to certain information, and then they establish the content from. And using lots of articles to spread them on Facebook and trying to establish certain ideology, saying that China is the best, the US is the worst, something like that. And just let me give you another brief example just happened recently. So during the outbreak of the COVID-19, there's a request actually from Chinese company, to the YouTubers here in Taiwan, asking Taiwanese influencers, the YouTubers, to support Taiwanese government's policy. And it sounds a little weird because they're paying someone to support Taiwan. So at that time, there was a policy in Taiwan prohibiting us from exporting the face masks to China. So China wants to pay someone here in Taiwan to support that policy and asking them to film the video, get lots of followers on YouTube, and later ask that YouTuber to film the second video, saying that they would rather throw the face mask to trash can instead of exporting the face mask to China. So through this kind of strategy, they're trying to make Taiwanese people to believe that the supporters of the Taiwanese government is lousy, is only patriarch. They only make clumsy arguments. They're really low. So I think that's one of the strategies they could employ, and they would like to invest a lot of money hiring people to do that, even you're in a foreign country.
Since you mentioned in YouTube, if you could explain to us how the information campaign that you have outlined in your report is looking at how the YouTube algorithm, which all of us presume is none of us know how to influence, is being used for that. If you could explain that simply.
Yeah, they actually have a team like analyzing all these YouTube videos and trying to calculate the algorithm. So making people might actually see the video they create. So let me start it from the beginning, because so first, if we want to really look at how they're doing that, we need to archive to back up all the things on the internet. So we try to archive Chinese media, Weibo, WeChat, like every 2 hours, in order to look at the high and low of all this online volume for different topics and see whether those trends are connected to the propaganda policy document, and further link other attacks around the world. And there are several strategies here that I put that in the report. And there are 3 elements that I think are important here. First is information manipulation, like how they manipulate the information. And second is how they invest into the market. And third is how they establish the ideology. So it's information, investment, and ideology. And what you just mentioned is more about investment. So I'll give you a very brief example here, like how they invest. So there are 3 different kinds of investment here. First is the Ministry of State Security or the United Front Work Department. They could directly donate or sponsor certain groups in your country or in Taiwan or in any other countries that are capable of spreading disinformation. And the best example there is the local newspaper that has been circulated for free in Taiwan just right now. I mean, it's just happened last week, has been proven to have connections to the United Front Work Department. It's just the way they invest. And the other kind of invest is that China invests in different domains not related to disinformation. So for example, like gaming industry or live streamers. So they will ask them to spread disinformation if necessary. And the last kind is the YouTube. So China tries to establish the disinformation market on YouTube. And it's not about algorithm. So first, what they're doing right now is that just giving you an example. In 2019, among the top 10 YouTubers who received donations online in Taiwan, 7 of them spread pro-China messages. But actually, the top YouTuber only got 70,000 subscribers, but could attract more than $1 million NT dollars per year. So China could actually pay someone who spreads pro-China or anti-US messages. And another example is that China tries to pay fan pages or private Facebook groups to spread articles and actually pay them in foreign currency. And the reason I know that is that actually I try to infiltrate into one of the groups. So so in one of the groups I joined, people can actually make $1,500 per month by simply disseminating all these pro-China articles in Taiwan. And that's marvelous because you do not need any official relations or connection with China. The only thing you need to do is just find some pro-China messages on Weibo or on WeChat, try to put it on YouTube, and then put it on your website, and then someone would pay you money. And then if someone traces all this disinformation, they will only trace that to me, when that will not link to the Chinese government. So that's why lots of fan pages and Facebook groups, they alter their behavior like during the election. And as you can see in this graph, they stop sharing certain messages in certain time and also spreading more and more disinformation at night or in the morning during commuting time. It doesn't mean that they have official relations, but because they're raising donations, they will know how to make money. So just invest into this kind of disinformation market. Set an example, everyone will follow. And that's how they could spread disinformation in a very effective way, even better than utilizing the algorithm.
There's an interesting question from Sudhanshu Sachet, who says, what you say, will there be any uprising like Tiananmen Square? Well, I've taken that because you are also, since the anniversary is coming up, you've already looked at, how there is influence being peddled online about Tiananmen.
Yeah, I mean, Tiananmen is a very controversial issue there in China. Yeah. So they really want to make sure like nothing happens over there. So every year they will start to control their internet. I mean, they are controlling their internet, but they will control more starting from May 4th. So like a month before the Tiananmen event. So I mean, in this way, if you really find anything explode on the internet, it means that they are not controlling well. Or if they're spreading more and more disinformation overseas, it doesn't look normal because most like cyber warriors or patriots, they could do nothing, I mean, from May 4th to June 4th. So which means that they could have more energy and then spread more disinformation in foreign country than spreading disinformation within China. So that's something that we should be aware of. And actually during the COVID-19 outbreak recently in Taiwan, we found out that there are like more and more disinformation spread by China starting from May 12th.
Right. Now, all of us know about the wolf warriors, and they are called, China's army in civilian clothes. But when they talk about, say, the COVID actually spreading from a U.S. Army base in Maryland, or however that narrative started there. But you are also talking about non-government channels being used, right? Now, that must be difficult to pinpoint.
Oh, yeah. So the best example would be Communist Youth of League, because they're not official. They do not really belong to the government, but actually they work very closely with the government. So if you really want to see whether there's a similarity between the nonprofit or non-government organization there in China and how they react to the propaganda that has been set up by the central government. There should be some technology issue that we should face. And actually, right now, we're using the writing style to analyze whether they speak to each other. So, I mean, back to the Wolf Warrior stuff, I think it's all about stability. So like Communist Youth of League, they're responsible for this kind of stability maintenance. And China spent a lot of money on stability maintenance program. So one way to stabilize their own society is to initiate those like warrior or wolf-like strategy to tell its own citizen how strong China is. And what they will do is that they will ask some commercial media or the content from operators or the Communist or Youth of League. They will test the public opinion first by posting lots of articles on Weibo and WeChat, and then they will select the best one to for the like People Daily, for the official media, and then confirm the ransom that they really want to propagate to the within the country. But what should be noticed here is that there are many forces there in China, and they actually fight and compete with each other. So, for example, the Communist Youth of League, the United Front Work Department, the People Liberation Army, the Ministry of State Security, they actually compete with each other. They're kind of decentralized. So that's what the message we receive. And then when we try to trace all this disinformation, it's hard to pinpoint because there are like all different writing style and all different topics initiated by different groups of people. So if we have that in mind, compared with the network-centric intelligence practice, China's practice are more decentralized, and China's intelligence practice rely on collaboration between private sectors and the government sectors, and they are responsible for different issues. So, I mean, the categorization of the adversary that I just mentioned, we try to map up the CCP entities to see how they involve in the information operation and provides an overview to analyze the China decentralized cyber attacks. And all these players, they could be capital seekers or capital owners. Maybe they want to make some money or they have a strong political motivation. But to see how they collaborate with each other, I think is the most important task that if we want to really dig into this kind of research, the Chinese information operation stuff. And the reason why I mentioned that is because they compete with each other and not everyone likes Xi Jinping. So sometimes if you look at the disinformation spread, let's say Communist Youth of League, it might be some anti-Xi message out there. Wow. And it's actually initiated by the department or the group there in China because there are like so many forces out there. And also even like in the overseas, for the Chinese diaspora, there's other religious group like Falun Gong. They'll also spread the information that will try to fight against this kind of propaganda stuff. So they're all fighting with each other, and sometimes it's really hard to find who is the initiator and who is the amplifier in this like information ocean.
And one of the purposes of your report and conclusions is also looking at, recommendations. And there are a couple of questions on that. Safal Phadke says, what are the ways to counter Chinese disinformation and their campaigns? And there's another one by DJ Shah who says, how can we counter these tactics in our democratic environment? The PLA is behaving like an army of fighters 24/7.
Oh, so I can share the Taiwanese experience here, and I'll put it into, two facets. One is the government, and the other is the civil society. So in our government, there's a team called Disinformation Coordination Team. So it's comprised by multiple agencies and convinced by one of the ministers here. It's called Chen, who is responsible for regulation coordination inside the executive branch. And also another minister called Andre Tang, who is quite famous right now. So in the beginning, the team, they collected existing regulation and literature around the world and map out dispute issues for further discussion. After a series of discussion with all agencies in our department that has struggled with disinformation, the team proposed a 3-element definition of disinformation that had been agreed by all others. and also 4 points of framework to develop policy for countering the infodemics. An agency will be assigned for each facet, and later instructed by the team to propose action plans. So there are 4 elements here. First is identification. It's to empower citizens that they're able to recognize this information, to make independent judgment. Second is debunking, to respond to misleading content of this information with a very timeless accuracy and clarity. And third is the combat, to contain the spread of harm across multiple platforms. So you have to collaborate with other social media. And the last one is punishment. It's asking them to investigate that the identities of these malicious disseminators, the bad actors, to hold them liable under the review of the judicial branch. So before the team, proposed this framework, it took like 6 to 7 hours for a government agency to approve and deliver press release for clarification. But after that, right now they call the 222 principle. So it means that first, you have to debunking the messages that contain no more than 20 characters, and no in the title, and no more than 200 characters in its content, and no more than 2 images. So it can be easily read and shared across the platform. So though those debunking messages ideally will be delivered within just an hour. And they also ask the government agency to use humor over rumor. So make people laugh and really willing to share all these debunking messages. So that's what Taiwanese government did. And I'll be really short talking about how civil society does. So in Taiwan, there's no typical public-private partnership. So the civil society actually tries to keep adequate distance from the government. And I think that's good because such practice does help the civil society actors earn trust of the general public and believe that they do not work for the government, because there are always someone who are against the government. And if you debunk the messages and work with the government, people will not believe in you. So it helped us to eliminate the suspicions on these fact-check actors for being part of the propaganda machines. So since there's no official public and private partnership, the civil actors and the government become only loosely coupled in countering disinformation. But the Taiwanese government will make people being aware of the harm of disinformation and telling people that, hey, there's this information campaign, we should be aware of it, and leave all these fact-check or debunking tasks to the fact-check groups. And actually, there are tons of fact-check groups here in Taiwan, and they all have their own expertise. So people would believe in that, and they all deliver all these debunking messages in a very efficient way.
Again, there's a question from Anil Maske, and obviously this must be going on. This is looking at, is there a campaign within China? And we were talking about the world and say Taiwan and the world. Is there a campaign in internal disinformation strategy within domestic politics in China to maintain the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party? Of course, there must be. Of course, there is.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And then I would say that 60 to 70% of the disinformation overseas are kind of like actually part of the stability maintenance there within China. So they're using what they're doing within China to other countries, like 60 or 70% of it. And then because one of the target group for China, especially for their information operation, is Chinese diaspora. And that's the group of people that they really want to control too. So they're using ambassadors' accounts, WeChat public groups, TikTok, like everything, try to affect all these people and try to buy all the media, like Chinese media all over the world. I mean, right now, most of them are owned by China or influenced by China. And that's why if you read in Chinese, they will be deeply influenced by Chinese propaganda. And let me give you like a very brief example is that several months ago, I conducted a quick survey here in Taiwan asking whether, hey, are we facing disinformation or not? More than half of people said yes, we're having disinformation attack from other country, which means good. However, when I asked about which country the disinformation came from, 34% here in Taiwan said China, 20% then said the US, and 20% said Japan. And actually, I really don't know what kind of disinformation is coming from Japan, but I mean, this is because like anti-Japan, anti-US messages are everywhere right now in our internet, because it has been created and amplified by all these Chinese-backed actors.
Dr. Shen, the corollary of that, in the sense, because there's such tight control of any kind of information, the platforms that are available within China, can countries or organizations reverse the tactic and spread disinformation, if you're looking at it that way, inside China or to Chinese entities?
Oh, you mean having the information back to China?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
is there anybody who does that?
A lot, especially human rights group, because they really want to like save someone. They're like human rights defenders there in China and really want to send the correct messages into it. So lots of human rights groups are doing that, but not in a very successful way, because they have their own wall. So it's really hard for us, and they can delete the messages timely, just in seconds. So that's why even you want to throw all this information into China, they could delete it in seconds, and no one would really be affected by the information you put there. So it would be a very hard task.
Yeah, understandable that. Dr. Puma Shen, thank you so much for spending time on StratNews and explaining both your report and Chinese information warfare. We wish you Doublethink Lab all the best, and we will keep in touch with you to understand more such subjects. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And you too have a good night, Dr. Shen. Thank you. Just a reminder to our viewers that you can help support our kind of journalism. There is a link given in the description of this video that you can go to help us financially to continue our kind of journalism. Do also support us by following our Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram handles, and keep watching and sending in your comments and participating in our discussions. Thank you for watching. This is The Gist on StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh.